Well, thank you very much, Rebbe Ezra. I'm sorry I kept everybody waiting. I was trying to get through. I pressed #1 instead of *1. But anyway, Baruch Hashem, I'm here now, and I want to start off by thanking, first of all, Rebbe Ezra for the amazing work that he does. Mamish, he's Mezakeh Klal Yisrael and doing Mamish, the work of the Eibishter, and he should be able to be gesund and stark. And of course, we want to thank all the volunteers that make Lshadech possible. Give me the sign over there so I could take it for this is you should see it for TorahAnytime.com. This marvelous organization, Lshadech. It's really a wonderful organization, and all the volunteers that are helping, the Rabbeinu Shalom should give you mamish malei mishaliseinu l'tova. I want to address first the wonderful Shadchonim that are listening to this teleconference and that are hearing it on TorahAnytime.com and on all the other different networks that we are connected to. Shadchonim all over should know. When I was when I was a young man just starting out in the Rabbanis about 35 years ago, I was at an Agudah convention together with the Boston Rebbe, and I'll never forget that the Boston Rebbe made an announcement after one of the main sessions that idealistic young men should come to Algonquin 11. It was a small meeting room, and he wants to tell them words of chizuk. So, of course, many of us, that were new to Rabbanis and to any other klal work, ran to Algonquin 11. It filled up immediately. And I'll never forget what the Rebbe said. The Rebbe said that in the beginning of the Torah, it says that when Cain killed Hevel, it says, Kol demei achicha tzayakim alai min ha'adama. The voice of the bloods of your brother are screaming out to me from the ground. So the question is, why does it say demei? Dam achicha, the blood of Hevel. Why demei? So one shot is that in those days they didn't learn biology yet, human anatomy, and they didn't know how to kill someone. So first Cain stabbed him in the leg, then he stabbed him in the hand, until he found a vital organ. He was mamish bleeding from all over. That's why it says demei. But then Rashi says another pshat. Rashi says, why does it say demei? Because it's not just Hevel's children, but his grandchildren, and his great-grandchildren, and his great-great-grandchildren, ad soif kaladairis, that could have been, are crying out. And then the Rebbe told us, Meruba mida taiva memidas peroniais, reward is greater than punishment 500 to 1. So if that's the punishment for what we cause bad, then what we cause good, and it's not just to the person that we cause to do good, but also their children and their grandchildren and their great-grandchildren. Now this is so evident with a shadchan that makes a shidduch. The Rabbeinu Shalom looks and says, you're not only making their shidduch, but you have a hand in their children and their grandchildren and their great-grandchildren and their great-great-grandchildren. Ad seif kaladairis. It's amazing what a shadchan does. If people would realize, they would run to do it. Then there's another thing. We know that there's 613 mitzvahs, tayag mitzvahs. They're all gevaldik. But there's a rarefied type of mitzvah, which is on a higher level, which is called the halachta bidracha, walking in Hashem's ways, or zekeli vanveyu. Anveyu is I will glorify him. Anivu, I will be like him. So, for example, somebody visits the sick. They're not only doing the mitzvah b'kechelm, they're doing the mitzvah of halachta bidracha, because Hashem visited Avram. And now what does the Rebbeinu Shalom do all the time? It says all the time the Rebbeinu Shalom is mezavek zivugim. So a shadchan is mamish being doima to the Creator. It's mamish the highest level of alachta b'dracha. So the shadchonim that are listening, you should know you're doing the Eibishter's work. Chazak ve'emotz. Now I want to tell the parents something very important. Listen carefully. We know that it's brought down kolam mispalu bad chaveiroi v'hu tzarech lo yisadav v'hu nenet chila. If you're mispal for your friend and you know it too, you're answered first. So avada, we're always taught that if your child needs a shidduch, or if people are listening that need a shidduch themselves, I know it's not for, it's only for parents and Shadchonim, but there are sometimes parents that also need shidduchim. You daven for yourself, daven for others. We all know that. Hamispal ba'ad chaver, you daven for somebody you need it too. Be mispal for your neighbors, neighbors that need shidduchim. Be mispal for them. But I want to tell you an even higher level. Listen carefully to what I'm saying. Your daughter goes on a basho or on a date, and it didn't go. But it's good to schayra, but they didn't click. It wasn't for them. But it was a good idea, and it was a fine boy, a fine maidel, a fine family. Immediately you should think, okay, so who do I know that this younger man would be good for? Who do I know this maidel will be good for? First of all, the Rebbeinu Shalom says, oh, you're caring about other people, I'll care about you, and then a tchila. But also, in a practical way. If you do that for your friends, they'll do the same for you. It's a very important thing. It almost went. It just, it was very close. So that means it's good to schayra. It's good to schayra, pass it along. And in that schus, the Rebbeinu Shalom will help you. This is a very important idea that people should practice. Now I want to talk about something very practical. I remember, Baruch Hashem, all my children are married, but it wasn't an easy time. People are not so excited for a Rav's daughter. First of all, how much money does a Rav make? And second of all, maybe the Rav will tell me what to do. So it's not it's not peaches and cream. But I remember that the more I made it easy for people to check out on my children, I gave them references, I gave them numbers, I gave them references for me and my Rebbetzin Alei Shalom. I gave them references for the children. If I made it easy and I gave them the cell phones and I didn't give them people that live in China, and it made the process go quicker. But there's something much more important than that. And that is, make sure you're giving good references. Now that people say, what do you mean? He's such a nice person. I have such a wonderful neighbor. But the references that you give need to be articulate. There are some people that they're good friends and they like your children, but they don't know how to answer a question. So the person will say, what do you say about the boy? Is he an introvert, an extrovert? And the person doesn't even know what an introvert and an extrovert is. You give them a reference, and they ask, so tell me, first of all, make sure the references know the person. You have no idea what a turnoff it is to a parent when they call up the reference and said, I'll tell you the truth, I don't really know them that well. But they gave you as a reference, and right away it leaves confusion. Make sure the references know. And what this means is you have a maidel, so you give them your shul's rav. It's a Chassidish rav. The Chassidish rav never saw your maidel. Doesn't know anything about her. Not only Chassidish, the Litvish rav, he never saw the maidel. So if you want to give a reference, you could give a reference for the family, your rav. But if you want to give a reference to the maidel, the rav, it's a well-known rav. It looks good on the resume. Oh, but they're going to call the rav, and he's not going to know the maidel. So if you want him to make an appointment, bring the maidel down to the rav, let the rav talk with her, and ask her, and get to know her, and then he could be a good reference. Take that time out. That's time well spent. So remember certain things. Number one, make sure the reference is really going to speak good. I've already had cases where people found out after long, bitter experiences that they were giving a reference, and the reference was saying, well, is there something wrong with your son? Then I don't know why you would consider her. This was a reference that was saying that. And if you have a suffix to that, somebody says, then, and I'm telling you to do this, al-pidin, have somebody call the reference to ask about your daughter and see what the reference says. Have somebody do it for you. And check out. Is it really a good reference? You need to have good references. That's very important. Now, there's a fine line between not being too picky and taking every shidduch. Of course, we shouldn't be too picky. And it's very important that we should talk with our children that they should weed out as many absolutes as they can. In other words, I absolutely won't go out with a girl that's my age. I absolutely won't go out with a boy that's the same height as me. I absolutely won't go out with a boy if he won't live in town. The more absolutelys we have, then the more we're narrowing our chance to quickly get a good shidduch. So although there are certain absolutely's that we should have, for example, a Hamish family should absolutely not tolerate a television. That should be an absolute. Life with a television is completely different than life without it. A home with a television is a home where the husband is looking at women. A home with a television is a home where there's a lot less learning of Torah. That's a good absolute. There should be certain absolutes. There should be certain absolutes. But we should try to weed out as many absolutes as we can. Should have an open mind. It says, I heard from a boy that he absolutely won't go out with a certain hair color. Take out as many absolutes as you can. But on the other hand, don't go out with everybody. Or b'show, if just to go out, there's a certain amount that a boy, a girl could present, a freshness, vivaciousness, and then there's a burnout. You don't want there to be burnout. On the other hand, and this is also very important, on the other hand, be careful about saying, maybe I can do better. There are a lot of people that are alone because of maybe I can do better. If it's good, then go for it. Not that maybe I could do better. Now, you have to know what to look for. So first of all, it's very important to look for kindness. Kindness, I told all my children, kind, and more kindness. If you're married to a kind person, you'll have a good life. Kindness, alev toiv, that's the midah which we tout as the highest midah in Pirkei Avos. A kind person. Besides a kind person, it's also a wonderful thing to get a person that has a simchas achayim. So if a person has a simchas achayim, a happiness, an inner happiness, when you get married, you're locked into the mood of your spouse. And if the person is by nature morose, melancholy, gloomy, be careful that you don't mix up seriousness with melancholiness, responsibility with morose, responsibility, not being, happy-go-lucky, that's good. Morose, moody, melancholy, that's no good. Simchas HaChaim is very important. Now, I once heard, there's a wonderful sefer called Dear Daughter. It's written by a Rabbi Goldschmidt. And I once heard this Rabbi Goldschmidt give a shir to the boys that came out of the freezer in Lakewood. He's not alive anymore. But I once heard an illegal tape of the shir. They weren't supposed to tape it, but I once heard a shir, and he said a very interesting thing. He said that boys should look, and the same thing is true for girls, they should look for seichel hayosher. What does that mean, seichel hayosher? It means the ability to think, when you go in a taxi in Eretz Yisrael, so the taxi driver says, yashar, yashar, straight. It's the ability to think straight. This is so important. Because, there's always going to be navigating differences in a marriage. There's going to be arguments. But if the person thinks straight, then you could reason with them. You could be logical with them. If they don't think straight, you're not getting anywhere. You speak apples, she speaks oranges. It's not. And that's something that's very important to look for, this ability to think straight. And I said to myself that I would like to make a sefer called Seichel HaYosher for Dummies, or Seichel HaYosher 101. How do you get to think straight? So I realized that really we know to finish the Daf HaYomi is 27 and 111 blot. So really you should be able to cut it down to 1,000 blot. How? Very simple. Just take out all the arguments. Take out all the Beis Shammais, Beis Shammai b'makom Beis Hillel less. Take out all the Beis Shammais. Take out all the Abayas except for Yal Kagam, except for 6, and only keep the Ravas. Take out most of the Reish Lakishes, and only keep Rabbi. What do we have to learn about all the different opinions that we don't paskin like? You cut out half Shas. Why do we learn it? The answer is because by learning the Havayas of Abaye and Rava, by learning their arguments, we're learning how to think. That's what we're doing. We're getting a logical mind. So I said to myself, it's a great pshat, must be a Maimer Chazal. It is. Talmidei Chachamim Ma'abrim Shalom B'ayinam. So it's very important to get people that could think straight. That's very important. Okay, now I know parents, they spend a lot of time when they're looking into Shidduchim and they speak to the references, they ask questions. So first of all, you don't have to, first of all, it's a good thing that you should go to your Rav, and we used to have 2 notebooks in the house, a blue notebook and a red notebook, pink notebook. And we had a sheet on every boy and girl. So therefore, when people called, we were able to answer what yeshiva the boy went to, and we were able to answer what the boy is looking to do, and we were able to answer. We had a sheet that we filled out that we knew. So it's good for you to, fill in your Rav, your Rebbetzin, with as much information as you can. But first of all, don't ask to death. You got to leave something up to the dating. People are so afraid. Don't. When we went out many years ago, there wasn't this whole questionnaire like it's, like you're filling out a tax form. Leave something. Make sure there's certain things that you want to try to make sure. You want to try to make sure that the boy doesn't have a bad temper. That you want to make sure. That's a deal breaker. So how do you find that out? So here I want to tell you the science of asking questions to references. Especially when you're talking to the boy's Rebbe, to the boy's Mashgiach. No Rebbe wants to talk bad about a Talmud. So the way to ask a question is to make both sides of the question sound positive. So you'll say, well, how do I do that? Well, for example, let's say you want to find out if the boy is outgoing or is not. So if you're going to say, is the boy, friendly or unfriendly? No Rebbe is going to say he's unfriendly. They're not going to say that. You're going to say, is he social or antisocial? No, that's not the way to ask the question. The way to ask the question is he more of the type that stays to the very end of the chasana, or is he the person that is found by the fireside reading a book? So you get the idea by making both. It doesn't sound bad to read by the fireside the book. Or let's say you want to know if the boy has a career in learning. So you ask the mashgiach, 5 years from now, do you see him teaching in the yeshiva, or do you see him as a good businessman? Now, you didn't say anything negative, but you're going to get your answer that way a lot quicker than if you say, is he good in the base measures, or is he always in the coffee room? If you do that, he's not going to say he's always in the coffee room. He's not going to say that about his bacher. It does. So you have, first of all, you have to know what to ask. And a lot of times it's hard to find out. But, you ask the friends, is he easygoing or excitable? So, excitable doesn't sound bad, but if he says, he's kind of excitable. So already, you have to check that out. What does it mean, excitable? And you you want to ask, but you also want to leave something for the children to find out themselves. The only thing you don't want to do is you don't want your child to get infatuated in a bad situation. That you don't want. So therefore, you want to check that the young man or the young lady doesn't have any addictive traits. That's important. You want to check out that there's chas v'shalom no gambling. You want to check out that there's no irresponsible drinking. And this is something that you have the right to check out. If you feel strongly about it, check out that the boy shouldn't be smoking. And when I taught seminary, I always told the young woman, listen, if you don't want to risk becoming a young almana, then you won't marry a person that smokes. That's all. So they asked me, but who are the people that smoke going to marry? It said, that's not your problem. That's not your problem. Then I tell them, and if you're not so worried about being a widow, your $7,000 Dini wig or your Ralph wig is going to stink from smoke. That scares them off right away. The same thing is true. You don't want them vaping, and you certainly don't want them smoking marijuana. That's a naya mishigas. You don't want them smoking marijuana. That's not what you want. You also want to make sure that they're not addicted to the computer. Because there are women, now I'm not even talking about to the schmutz, that's ein problem. But even besides that, there are women that are lebedik almanas because their husbands are always on the computer, morning, noon, and night. So you have the right to check up on these things. And it's another thing that the Sefer Hasidim says is that you should check that the boy shouldn't be cheap. It's very hard to live with a cheap boy. If the boy is cheap, look elsewhere. Now, I want to... There are parents that are listening on this teleconference that have children at home that are down about themselves because they have friends in school that already are on their third child, and sometimes they're already making a bar mitzvah and they're still single, and they're very down upon themselves. So first of all, I want you to know that time equals out later. You know, there are people that get married later, and then they have triplets and twins. There are people that get married early and then get divorced. There are people that get married early and are infertile for 10 years. So, first tell the children, don't look at Yenim. Don't look at someone else. Secondly, first of all, I'll tell you what Reb Chaim Kanievsky said. He said he had his father, the stipler, and the Chazon Ish trying to get him a shidduch, and it wasn't going. Imagine having Yichus, a tata, the stipler, and an uncle, the Chazon Ish, the Gadol Adar Mamish, the ganze Welt. He can't get married. But he said when he started dating, his Rebbetzin Kanievsky, Rav Elyashiv's daughter, wasn't even bas mitzvah yet. That's why it wasn't going. I'll tell you a story with me. I was in Yeshiva Staten Island. I was a Talmud of Moshe Feinstein. And I had chaverim. They were getting married already at 21. So at my 21st birthday in Yud Beis Av, I went to Moshe and I said, should I start going out? He said, no. And at 22, I asked him, should I start going out? And I already had chaverim with children? He said, no. At 23, I went to ask Rav Moshe, should I go out? And then already, I was, I said, Avadi yetzich zolgein arois. And so I was a little pushy. So the Shiva said, no. I should have got the message. I went out that whole year and mamish nothing. I went out only once, with one girl twice, and she said no. At 24, I asked her as yeshiva, and he said, Mirz Hashem, you'll be a chazan. And the next girl I met was my Rebbetzin, Baruch Hashem, with a happy life for 38 years, B'li Ayin Hara. When I got engaged to her, she was just 19. That means that when I asked Rav Moshe beginning to go out at 21, right, so she was 14, 15. So we have to know that sometimes Abba Sherta isn't ready yet. So here you have a girl, she's all upset that she's 28. The truth of the matter is it could be that her Basharta isn't ready yet. So it's certainly true with a boy, but it could be true with a girl too. The Basharta isn't ready yet. That's something that's very important to know. Now, I remember I gave a shir many years ago. I gave a shir. One other thing I want to tell you, that Yish, feeling a sense of hopelessness, giving up, is only the atzas hayetzer. Yish, we say in yeshiva, Yish shaloi midas. A person shouldn't be miyoyish. No, I remember there was a girl in Staten Island, a wonderful girl. She was very sick. And her husband married her knowing that she was very sick. He lived with her 1 year and then she passed away. She had 1 year of marriage. Person shouldn't, there's a whole life ahead. A girl, a boy that's 28, that's 32, they have a whole long life ahead of them. They shouldn't get the Rebbeinu Shalom has a shidduch for everybody. There's a shidduch for everybody. Now, but, here's the but. We need to do proper hishtadlus. And here is where parents, the day of my daughter is wunderbar, is wonderful, the phone should be ringing, those days are over. Parents have to be proactive. And since we don't know where the shidduchim is coming, we have to spread our net. Now, I know that children don't like to speak to Shadchonim. I don't like to. But we should push them to. And if not, we should do it. Because you never know. I want to tell you a story from my family. Listen very carefully. We had a daughter, Devora, was our second daughter. Wonderful girl. She wasn't getting shidduchim. She just wasn't getting shidduchim. First of all, we lived in Staten Island, a little bit chutz machna. And like I said, a Rav, well, how am I going to live with a Rav? How is he going to be able to help me, So, there was we go to the Catskills. At that time, we were going to Sun Circle Bungalows in South Fallsburg. And there was in one of the papers that there was a woman that was opening up her home and invited a bunch of Shadchonim, and parents were asked to come with a picture of their daughter and to speak to the Shadchonim about their daughters. So my Rebbetzin wasn't ashamed. She took a picture of my daughter. She spoke to 10 Shadchonim describing our daughter and her milas. And one of the Shadchonim said to her, you know, your daughter sounds perfect for this boy that I know in Denver. They went out, and now they have 5 children. Now, there was no way we would have ever known about this beautiful family in Denver if my wife didn't go and mamish shop. But that's the shtadlus. And because of that, we have a beautiful son-in-law, David, from Denver. Now they moved to Lakewood. And we have 5 beautiful grandchildren because of the shtadlus. I tell people, you never know, maybe your child's shidduch is in Belgium. Maybe your child's shidduch is from Baltimore. We went ahead and we spoke to Shadchonim from Baltimore. We spoke. I have to speak to. Yes. Now, I want to tell you that I know that there's certain children that are in their 30s already. And the problem is because their parents are quiet like mice. They're both very bashful. And the children are losing out. And you should know, if you know somebody in your area that is that way, you should look for them. And sometimes the child has to do it themselves. But that's very hard. It's very hard to sell yourself. Parents have to know it's their duty for the benefit of their children to talk to many Shadchonim, to network. You must network. The more Shadchonim you can talk to, oh, I tried that Shadchan. Remember what I want to tell you another thing. And this is, it's very important. Your son, your daughter has a successful basho. It didn't go, but it was close. And the Shadchonim, the Shadchan worked hard, back and forth and back and forth. By Litvisha, they got to the 4th date, and they were thinking, should it go, should it not? And there was something that was like, it just, they couldn't get over the girl was from Detroit, and she wanted to live in Detroit, and the boy didn't want to live in Detroit, and they just couldn't. It was mamish. They got along, but they couldn't bridge that gap, and it didn't go. But it was close. Send the Shadchan a check. I don't know. I can't tell you what your ability is. But if your ability is send a Shadchan 4 dates, it got close, send a Shadchan a check, $180 check, with a letter, thank you, there was a lot of give and take. That Shadchan will work for you more and will tell other people about it. I want you to know that after I lost my first Rebbetzin, Zech Tzadik L'Vracha, Zchus Yagan Aleinu, and I had the Shalosh Regalim where I was in Avelis, afterwards, I didn't know where to start. I wanted to remarry. The Baba Rebbe says it only says Loi Tov in the Torah once, Loi Tov V'Yos Adam Levadoi. So I went to a Shadchan and I wrote him out a check of $1,000. I says, this is in advance. Please work for me. Now, not everybody could do that. But he didn't. He tried one. It wasn't something that I was interested in. He didn't have somebody. He spoke to another Shadchan, Reb Blatter, who also didn't have something, but he was eating a Shabbos meal by Tzipi Levi, who was Reb Pluchak, Olav Shalom's daughter, and she knew my Rebbetzin now, and she made the shidduch. But yeah, a mensch has to make a shtadlus. And if you take out the checkbook and make a little ishtadlus and show the Shadchonim hakaras hatoiv, then I'm not talking, it doesn't have to be $1,000, but they do a lot of things, they don't get anything until they make it. So you show a little hakaras hatoiv, that makes a difference. Now, I also want to add that you should make sure that if your child goes out and knows the first minute that it's no good, or a Basho knows right away, no, it's not for me, make sure you give the other person a good time. There's some people who say, yes, it's not for me. And you could see it. And it leaves a bad taste in the girl or the boy's mouth. They'll tell their friends about it. You have to be very careful about it. First of all, it's not v'afta l'reach kamocha. You have to be very careful about this. Also, when it's no good, be careful what you tell the shadchan, why you're saying no. Remember the other side is going to agonize. It was a good boy, a good girl. Why did they say no? So let's say, Lamashal, you're saying no because you didn't like the look. So you can't say that, you know. So you say something else, but say something that's the truth. You could say, it wasn't for me. They're not going to make a bad inference from it. Don't say, she didn't give him a good time. She wasn't friendly. Don't say that. It's not true. You didn't like the look. That's one thing. But don't say something that the other side is going to... Again, that's not the after meicha. Also, as parents... You see a shidduch that's great on paper. Mamish great on paper. There's yichus, there's everything. But if your son or your daughter can't get beyond the looks, you could say try it again. Sometimes the personality overwhelms that. Sometimes you could get used to it. You could say that. But don't push it. I see as a Rav afterwards problems because the parents pushed it, and he says, "Ich hab nicht lieb." My parents pushed me, and then it's a gefährliche matzav. Don't. You as I said, you could say, try it again. Maybe see. You know. Sometimes afterwards you could find chen. You could say, don't push it. Don't push it. I always told my children, Mommy, Aleh Shalom, and I will never tell you to marry someone. Just listen to us if we tell you not to marry someone. But we'll never tell you to marry. We don't have to live with them. You have to live with them. Never push your children into it. Don't do that. I mean, if you have sometimes a child is having a problem to close it, some children have a problem closing the deal, so then you need somebody to help them with that. But don't push them into something. That's never a good idea. I've been asked by parents if they should lie about age. You know, if we say the age, we right away, of course we'll tell the truth later, but if we say the age, it's going to be right away a no. So first of all, today with the internet, it's very hard to hide the age. They could find it out. There's all kinds of public records. They pay a few dollars. They get all the public records. It's not smart. And then if you're caught in a lie, that's not good. Then there's no trust. But second of all, and this is even more important, even before you could check it out, or even if they don't know how to check out, we in life, we have to make hishtadlus. That's all we have to do is make hishtadlus. We have to ask ourselves, is lying the proper hishtadlus? Chaysama yishel HaKadosh Baruch Hu emes. Is that the hishtadlus? Our zivig is already made from 40 days before Yetziras HaBlad. 40 days before Yetziras HaBlad, a baskol goes out, bas ploinus leploini. We have to make our hishtadlus. Does it make sense that we should lie? That's the hishtadlus that the Rebbeinu Shalom wants. That's very hard to imagine. Now, Lamaisa there's a skula for shidduchin at the end of Shemona Esrei, before saying the Yiluratzan, to say Shilamalas Esa'inai Alaharim Mi'ayin Yovei Ezri, of course, is the Ezer that we're looking for. Ezri Mi'im Hashem Oisei Shemayim V'aretz. And it says, of course, Al Zois Yispal Kol Chosid La'is Mitzay. So Tefillah is a very big thing. Tefillah is a very big thing. We should daven, Zaydah should daven. There's nothing wrong with going to the kfarim of ancestors and tzaddikim. Baruch Hashem, if you live in the tri-state area, we have kfarim like the Rimitzer Rebbe in Monsey and the Satmar Rebbe in Monroe, and we have kfarim in Queens, Rapam, the Chofetz Chaim's second wife. We have Rav Avigdor Miller. We have Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky. We have so many gedolim that we could go to their kfarim and daven for. And of course, the tefillah, snapshot that I davened already. There's no such thing. We know that Moshe Rabbeinu v'Eschanan Hashem. Moshe Rabbeinu played, the gematria of Eschanan, the 515 tefillahs, and if the Rebbeinu Shalom didn't say Ravlach, he would have davened more. So we storm the Shemayim, and in the schus of us coming together and talking about it. Again, the volunteers that are part of Lshadech, part of this Moiridik organization, they should be blessed. Reb Ezra, for putting it together, should be blessed. And I give a birchas hediyat that the parents that are listening, Mirz Hashem, should go l'chuppah v'kedushin with your children quickly to their proper zivig, and should celebrate with the ganze mishpacha with gesund, and the Shadchonim should make many shidduchin, and it should go smoothly and quickly, and we should all share many simchas together at Bias Gel Tzedek B'mher V'yameinu.